welcome back to Real Talk with Cece. Today we're going to be covering our part 5 of our anxiety series, which is covering post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, everyone in existence at one point in their life or another has experienced a traumatic event that was impactful in nature. And for some, it is a little bit harder to cope than it is with others, but that does not make them any weaker. It's just how people are different in coping. That's nothing serious or personal about that. Now, according to the research that I've come across, PTSD is characterized by harder time recovering after witnessing or experiencing a terrifying or traumatic event. Now, this can happen in any form. This is either in a military or combative situation, in childhood abuse, sexual abuse. This can happen in a toxic, abusive relationship. A lot of things can induce these traumatic scenarios for us, in which are harder for us to recover from and will require a little bit of assistance from the outside. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that you need help. I just want to make that perfectly clear for anyone that is watching this and you feel like you may have PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. I just highly encourage you to make you understand that you are not alone and that you are loved, and that there are a lot of people out there with different scenarios who are still coping from this. And so just to give you a little bit more validation about that, a lot of people get the conception that it's primarily war veterans that will receive PTSD, or those in first responders kind of positions, when it's actually even people that are of common nature, just people that have grown up in really tough situations or ended up in a really toxic relationship in which they couldn't get out of, and it can cause a lot of stress on the brain. And so according to what I've discovered in my notes for PTSD, is that there are specific triggers in which a person can experience following after this event, in which they will have either a physical or emotional reaction to it. So if a person will have either a feeling that they had that was similar to that in their traumatic event, or they get triggered by a certain sound, smell, sight, something that they visually see. It can be anything as common objects, conversation, people, places. It'll cause a lot of avoidance in people who are experiencing it. For people who've had traumatic experiences, they will avoid the places in which they experienced that trauma. They'll avoid the conversations and the people that led up to it. Maybe even avoiding certain type of clothing, things that they wore during that traumatic event that they don't ever want to wear again, because it just reminds them of what they went through. And so when it comes to PTSD, there is an understanding that this is a condition that can either take months or years to cope from, and the sooner you get this diagnosed and addressed and taken care of, the less likely it'll be a lifelong battle for you. But it's never too late for you to recognize when you need help. It doesn't matter how far long ago that the event has happened, that you can actually seek advisement and a little bit of ways to recover and cope from that. And so when for instance, when I mentioned in my last video about me being diagnosed with PTSD, this is where I got diagnosed with it in about 2 years ago, in 2017, and it was I felt like I already had it just by the simple things that I was feeling and the research that I was coming to consensus to, but I run it by my CBT, my cognitive behavioral therapist, and from there I was suggested to a psychotherapist who gave me some more in-depth understanding of PTSD, and as well as providing the right kind of therapies and treatments. Sometimes, to an extent, medications might also be recommended. There's a lot of different ways that you can cope from it. There's also ways that you can use alternatives. There is aromatherapy, deep meditation, and yoga. There's exercising. There is art and music therapy, in which you interpret your trauma or what made you feel better and recover from it. And that I'm a firm believer in art and music therapy. It's not as mainstream as I'm hoping it can be, but I'm pretty sure that it will be catching on in the future. It's just such an essential therapeutic way of coping from your from your worries and coping from your memories, that it really does make a profound impact on people, and I've seen it firsthand. Now, along with that, there is also recommendation of doing, excuse me, there is also recommendation of you wanting to pretty much assess when you're having a trigger, what's going to trigger you, and how you can avoid it in a healthy way, but not do it into a way that will lead you to social isolation. Because sometimes that can happen with people with PTSD, where they will avoid things to a degree that they actually will avoid everyone at all costs. Now, for those not suffering with PTSD, it is important that you do not take this personally, as it is a very trying time, and it's very similar to like that of coping with grief, and there will be depression, anger, denial, bargaining, and eventually acceptance. And you know, it doesn't matter what stage that your loved one is in, just make sure that you convey with them how much they're loved, how much they've got a support system with you, and how they've got a safe space with you. That's the important part, is making sure that they feel that they are okay enough to talk about their worries and their traumas and actually really get it out. And I just really want to thank everyone for coming along on this ride with me. You guys have been an absolute treasure, and I adore and thank you so much for the support. Continue to follow and like Real Talk with Cece, and we will switch it up to lighter notes. We're going to have so many different topics that we're covering, from the power of words to coping with change and the laws of attraction, spirituality versus religion. So many different topics that I'm so excited to share with you guys. But I really hope you guys have a fantastic week. I hope you're taking care of yourselves and each other.